Good little sentient computer program. Oh, you're so adorable. You're so adorable. Here on Need You Please, a vile visit to Bajor. My name is Joseph.
And I'm your co-host, Peter.
Peter, what episode of Star Trek did we watch this week?
We got into The Forsaken, Season 1, Episode 17, first aired May 23rd, 1993. Teleplay by Don Carlos Dunaway and Michael Piller. Story by Jim Trabata. Directed by Les Landau. In-universe date 2369.
The only thing I remembered about this episode was that, oh yeah, this is the one with Lwaxana Troi and Odo in the elevator. And I really like those scenes. I really think these are important to Odo's character development. I bet this episode is great. And I really forgot everything else that happened in it. Like, I just completely did not remember there was any other plot to it. And then I watched it, and this is the biggest piece of shit of the season, and I mean it. This sucked. This sucked bad.
I fell asleep during this one.
Yeah, this Move Along Home, I was enraptured, engaged, couldn't look away, like a car wreck in slow motion. So much to think about, so much to talk about, so many mystifying decisions, entertaining in its own right. This sucked out loud. This is a complete mess. The direction, the writing, I don't understand what they thought they were doing. The only thing that holds any interest is exactly what I remembered, which is Lwaxana Troi and Odo in the elevator. And it's not nearly enough to make this worth watching.
You got a couple different things going on in this episode. You've got Julian, the diplomat envoy bitch boy.
Yes. Like straight off, right off the rip, I am making Bashir do some shit I don't want to do, is like the clear B plot.
There's the A plot, which I would say is Troi wants to fuck Odo.
Yes.
And then there's whatever this computer program is. Which I'm going to guess that Don Carlos Dunaway and Michael Piller and Jim Trombetta. I'm going to guess that they probably don't know how to use a computer. And
I mean, it's probably true, right? This was written in the early 90s by a bunch of boomers. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not talking space, people born in space boomers.
No.
Not Enterprise boomers. Like, I don't even know how I want to talk about this thing.
Yeah, it's hard to know because it's just it's so bad that it's, well, like, where do you start?
Well, let's just review the goddamn thing instead of splitting these plots up. We'll hit them as they go along. We're going to open up with. Admittedly, I find this part pretty interesting because it's a look at Federation resources and what the Federation is outside of Starfleet. You have this new wormhole open. You have a Starfleet presence policing that wormhole effectively, right?
Correct.
And the United Federation of Planets has decided that they are going to take the step through the wormhole and start really trying to survey what's going on there. And it's not Starfleet per se that's going to go through the wormhole, but Federation Diplomatic Corps. So you've got some lady who is kind of like the mom from Arrested Development. You've got Mrs. Bluth.
Yes.
You've got Mott's angry conservative uncle.
Yes.
You've got a pretty decent Vulcan in there who I had to stop and pull up IMDb because I would have sworn this guy's voice was the person they used in Mass Effect to do all the audio entries in like the codex.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that. I presume it's not.
It's not. He doesn't really have anything fun to associate him with, but I thought the Vulcan guy was pretty cool. And then there's Lwaxana skeeving it up over playing Dabo, but in the middle of all this is Julian Bashir, who, as best I can tell, is the only doctor on the space station. And they've got him wrapped up on, I don't know, he's like pool boy, basically.
I think there's a potential in the idea of Cisco is purposefully kind of picking on Bashir, which we have ourselves noticed, right?
Every episode, he is bullying Bashir. And the amazing part of this to me is that Julian legit has Cisco's back. Julian could be in there like, fuck this guy for sticking me with these psychos. I just want to be hitting on Dax or growing illegal clones or whatever shit I do in my little office there. And instead, I'm dealing with these miserable people. And they're like making demands. Like, we want to see Cisco, this and that. And like, he's making lies about recalibrating scanners, which is a stupid move because then, of course, the Vulcan wants to be a part of that.
It's like, oh no, he's excited. Fuck.
But Julian's doing a real solid to Cisco. And I haven't seen anything in this show yet that makes Julian seem like he hasn't really, for all intents and purposes, just been a consummate professional and a great coworker, right? Minus trying to fuck Dax.
It is a major down point for him.
Listen, I've seen Lieutenant Reed. Okay, I've seen what a bad coworker looks like.
That's true. Okay. Yes.
There's nothing wrong with Julian Bashir. I'll work with this guy any day.
So you saying Julian Bashir, active if harmless sex pest, better than having to deal with Malcolm?
What do we call him? Julian Lepew? Dr. Fuckboy?
So you're saying Dr. Fuckboy over Malcolm Reed. Malcolm Reed is the kind of man who will jump kick you as you exit the door.
Yeah. Listen, I take whoever you're going to say is Ensign Kim, Julian, or what's his face, Malcolm Reed, and the only person that I would say I'd take Reed, working with Reed over, would probably have to be Raffi.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that's not close either. My
No.
God. Like,
I would work with
this hierarchy makes sense. Like, it would, in terms of most annoying character on the show, Bashir is the best of the most annoying.
Kim, I'm not even, yeah, I guess this is most annoying.
Yeah,
Which
and then Kim would be the next most annoying, and then Malcolm Reed, and then Raffi. Yeah, no, I buy that.
No, man. Give me a post-it note. I'm gonna have to rank the most annoying, and it's, you know, all these people minus Raffi are pretty great at their job.
It's true. There's nothing wrong with Malcolm Reed. It's a little too good at his job.
From cum shields to overclocking your phaser, Malcolm Reed's the man for the job. The correlation here might actually be the better you are at your job, the worse you are to be around. And when we phrase it like that, you know, lest we forget fucking Crusher, Wesley Crusher.
Worst. Wesley Crusher. I was like, what's wrong with Dr. Crusher? She was awesome.
She was great. Awesome.
Aside from fucking the ghost that one time, holding on a single problem.
Listen. First of all, the thing wrong with Crusher is her fucking kid. So that she's not guilt free in all this, right?
Only one of them. Jack was fine. He may have accidentally, gotten the entirety of Starfleet, assimilated. But that's probably less annoying than Wesley.
A lot of people died. I'd be happy to work with Dr. Crusher knowing she fucked the ghost. Like, what a great story to rib her about after work over cocktails.
Just every once in a while when she's getting a little too ahead of herself, she's kind of acting like a cocky asshole.
Someone's like,
that was a great idea, Beverly. Did you get that from the ghost whose penis was within you?
Well, I don't think you're going to be on the flagship long talking like that, but you could get her passive aggressively to start hanging out Halloween decorations and like...
Just wear a sheet everywhere you go with holes cut out. Doesn't make you horny, Beverly.
Yeah. Getting back to this episode, though, the bad episodes. I'm going to say a DS9 rule is that the less quark, the worse the episode. There's minimal quark in this, and this is a turkey.
I mean, there's a strong correlation there. So I mean, would you say, I don't know how you ranked if wishes were horses. I don't remember what your rank was for Move Along Home, but is this your first bad DS9 episode on
I
your ranking
called
scale?
Dax, the passenger, and Move Along Home bad.
Is this terrible? Is this below it?
No, gosh, man, like quantitatively, no.
Well, you don't seem committed to that. You seem like you're thinking about it.
What? How are we rating these things? Am I putting this up against season 2 of Enterprise?
It's
Is
I
it
think
its own thing?
the purity of your ranking system is that it comes from the gut, the Peter gut. And that's why I defer to them. And it's why I think I think that our audience craves this information. I would like to pitch to you, this is the first terrible DS9 episode.
Season 2 of Enterprise jumped me in an underground parking garage and took my teeth out with pliers. Is this a terrible episode? God, no. Absolutely not.
You are mildly interested in the people in it, therefore it is not as bad as Enterprise Season 2.
I mean, the worst I would do on this one for me is going to be bad. It might even slide in as a meh, because I think that the Odo the Odo stuff is pretty great.
It is.
B, this is probably the best Lwaxana Troi episode I think I've ever seen.
I want to spend a moment defending Lwaxana Troi, which is, I don't think, a popular take among Star Trek fans, but I'm going to try my best. I adore Lwaxana Troi because it's the only example of a mother-daughter relationship in Star Trek. It's it. It's the only one. And I think that Marina Sirtis and Majel Barrett played extremely well against each other on TNG as mother and daughter. I think that they both kind of picked up on what they needed to do to make that dynamic work, and it made them very entertaining on screen together. Hell, even when they're not on screen together, I just love that when Troi gets drunk in First Contact, she starts acting like her mother. Like they just are in sync on that. And I think that Lwaxana being a full Beta Z and Deanna's mother like demonstrates through her performance, particularly in this episode as well, where some of Deanna's traits come from, like the empathy, the caring, the ability to like reach out to somebody and be able to provide them with, well, therapy. Really, it's nice to have all of these things actually within the universe that would otherwise be missing. So I'm a Lwaxana Troi apologist. She's pretty seldom used, frankly. Like, she's only in 3 DS9 episodes, and I don't forget how many in TNG, but I'm not a hater. I'm just not.
They don't put her in flattering scenes usually. Her chasing Picard is shticky and gets old quick. Her being a hoe bag, like, is fine and entertaining, but when she's chasing the same guy, it just becomes a dead horse that they're beating. Since we're kind of moving all throughout the episode right now, her scenes on the elevator where she finally gets Odo cornered and Odo gets into this vulnerable place and she turns the bullshit off and becomes compassionate and chill, and someone like really great to be on screen. And I think the miss there is the explanation of why does she have this big, obnoxious, hoish persona that she projects when there's, a pretty reasonable, nice person out there. And it could have been a admission of vulnerability, and that's like a coping skill she has. It could have been her saying like, that's an act I wear because it lets me do my job better, or I get better telepathy sessions when I have people in a certain frame of mind around me, or even just saying, I do whatever the fuck I feel like because I'm royalty and I know it's not the best look for me and it rubs people the wrong way, but I have fun with it and fuck the world, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. All valid.
So there's a lot more that they leave on the table with this character, and I don't think they're willing to go in and really put the time in to make her deep because they know that it's a character they bring out, I feel like, out of obligation to Gene Roddenberry and not because people are clamoring for it.
I agree that they don't go deep and that it's mostly comic relief. And you're absolutely correct. They want to give Majel Barrett work, right? She's the boss's wife. It's just the way it is. But I think that despite those things, which does work against it, I'm not saying she's the best part of anything uh, Star Trek related. She's not. It's not even her best Star Trek role. Clearly, the computer voice on the Enterprise D is her best Star Trek role. Um, I I like it for what it is, and the fact that it's pretty seldom used. Couldn't imagine that Lwaxana Troi's got more than 10 episodes in all of Star Trek. When it gets busted out, it's typically there's a point to it that's pretty well done, right? Even when it's like more comedic. And yeah, maybe if we could have gotten a little deeper on why it is that she hose it up, or what her secret game is here, that might have helped. But I don't think we needed to know. Like, they made this episode work too. Just that part of her comes out, and she's able to give Odo the assistance he needs when he needs it, and it somehow feels right that she was the person that was able to do that for him.
She's also a great foil to him, and I love all the intro stuff to their relationship where she's just like, you're amazing. You're the thin beige line between order and chaos.
Oh
And
yeah.
like, this dude's so naive, and he's just like, oh my gosh, I'm being recognized. Like, this is what I say. This is what I tell people. You understand it. You're like, you don't understand. You're about to get cooged, fool.
And that is touched. You can chalk that up to Renee Abenjeros, right? Like, the dude knew exactly what he was supposed to do with his character in this episode, and he does a great job of it. Right from the I don't understand, I'm about to get hit on, to his deep discomfort with getting hit on, to his extremely matter of fact ways he explains his own physiology to Lwaxana as time goes on. Like, this isn't a mouth. I don't have an esophagus. It's an approximation I create to fit in.
Well, how do you make noise out of that? That's my question. If it's just a hole, where's the...
It's not a mouth. That's his point. Like, I don't have to eat. I don't eat food. Like, I've created a tongue. I'm doing the things necessary to speak. I can simulate all these things, but it's not actually an appendage in my body.
What was your
goo.
What was your take on the frustration that he was having as she was like asking specific questions? Is your hair real? Clothes, where did your hair come from? Like the design, like stuff like that. Cause he gets like real huffy puffy about it. And I think you could take it as either the conversation is beneath him or that this is very important stuff to him. And part of him is like vindicated or honored that someone would ask about it, but his ego won't allow him to like celebrate it. So he's answering the question. He could just be like, none of your fucking business, bitch. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But he answers it, but there's like a show around. Oh, fine. I guess I'll give you this incredibly detailed answer.
Well, let me turn that around, because the answer is that these kinds of parts of Odo's personality get pretty well developed and explored as time goes on. So I know the answer. So let me instead ask you a question.
Well, no. It's not. It's not.
Why he feels this way and why he answered it that way is actually something you kind of get to know. You kind of get to understand. Like, this is why this episode's actually important to a lot of people, is because it's the first time you kind of start to dig past the surface on Odo. You get to kind of see that he's got a history. You first mention of that he was a science experiment, that there was a guy sent to test, to experiment on him, that he kind of was like a weird party favor. His sentience wasn't recognized. These are themes you're kind of already aware of because we watched Picard season 3 and they kind of made a whole thing out of it there too.
Mm-hmm.
But these are all of these things he's talking about and why he's hesitant to talk about it and why the choices he made are painful for him to discuss. There are episodes about this as time goes on. So I don't want to answer, but what I do want to ask is, as somebody who doesn't know too much about Odo's history or about the changelings in general, what do you think of like how he is portraying as someone who doesn't know anything about himself, which is probably the most interesting thing for him at this point in his development?
Sad, wounded, hopeful that something will come
Hopeful.
out.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a very childlike, a dejected, not dejected, but there's a sad child quality to all of it, and I like it. It contrasts his gruff, smug arrogance when he's out on the promenade.
There's, of course, a great deal more that happens in this episode, but none of it's as interesting.
I want to say, as far as Majel Barrett goes, here's perhaps the biggest miss for me, is that they never did an episode where TNG or whatever, the time butthole opens up and number one gets thrown out. And I'm very curious, like, you've got this lady, it's a throwback to like TOS, and clearly you weren't above using those characters. You brought in Scotty, you had DeForest Kelly, you brought in Shatner for Generations. You're dealing with a rabid fan base that absolutely knows the cage, right? Like,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
that would have been a cool B plot or an A plot and a, what do we do? Here's what happened to her. She's been off wherever. And that might have even been really nice because it could have stopped all the mutant nonsense they do in Strange New Worlds. And having watched her in this elevator scene, I'd really like to see her in a serious role. So I don't know, the Odo stuff further demonstrates that you put Odo in a scene with a one-on-one and you're going to get good mileage.
Yes.
Normally it's Quark that he's doing amazing work with. I want to start seeing him getting paired with some of the other main casts.
And he does. He definitely does. And obviously he becomes a centrally important character to the plot in ways that, the plot of the show doesn't presently even conceive of, right? Like, they once the concept of what he is gets unlocked in the show, he becomes much more of a force in what's going on. But I remember what I was going to say. I was struck by something you said about his childlike nature and how really he is a child, right? Like, he's not been a solid for very long. He's not been a sentient creature for very long. And so much of his character can be attributed to a lack of emotional development as a consequence of really not having much experience at it. He's sophisticated. He's not a child in the sense that he is unable to do complex things. But, and this is where Lwaxana comes in a very important and good foil to him, is that he's somebody that needs emotional guidance. He needs help understanding being vulnerable. He's not ever had anyone do that for him.
If you take his reactions when he is not getting his way, this is a great episode for it, where he's like trying to run away from her. And there's been a couple other situations where he's a little out of his element, having to go up on the bridge or ops, whatever. They play it for laughs where he's like clawing at doors and like looking around and making, I think someone's on the radio for me. And one way to look at it is that, okay, this is a comedy beat or whatever.
Yeah. It's a couple good ones.
you could also take it as this is not comedy. This is the way he's really acting. He looks like a fool. This is someone who is not prepared to be outside of his element, and his ego is so fragile that when poked from the right angle, the guy completely falls apart because no one's ever like developed these coping skills with him or like built these emotional reinforcements.
Now, I think there's a lot of truth to that. But it's also just funny when he's like looking into the middle distance and says, I was looking at that electrical panel and how much electricity was running through it.
I mean, that's fine.
Go
I'm
on.
talking about like when he comes off the elevator and he's like clawing at the doors
yeah.
trying to get them open. Again, we take that in the moment as, ah, ha, ha, this is a funny scene. But if someone were acting like that in real life, you'd be like, dude, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like,
Yeah.
you've got no cool and you look like a big idiot right now. So
it's like, you got a problem when you go to your boss and be like, can you get the woman to leave me alone? She makes me uncomfortable. Like,
I mean, that's the right way to do it because she's a big deal.
It's true.
Unfortunately, you have one of the worst bosses I've ever seen who just laughs at people.
A psychotic. An actual psychotic.
He is crazy.
He's like, she wants to fuck you? Why don't you let her fuck you?
Mm-hmm.
Have you considered letting her fuck you? Wouldn't that be great? I want to hear about that.
Are you like a Ken doll when your pants come off? Can we fix that?
He was like excited. Like, oh, holy shit, you're going to get laid? Tell me more. Like, no, it's making me uncomfortable. Aw. Well, you're no fun. Get out of here.
So
rest of the episode.
The stuff with Julian,
yeah,
it's good.
Is it?
I like that.
Good.
Again, these are people that represent the Federation and not Starfleet. They're going into the wormhole on this diplomatic mission to explore exciting new things. The one lady, she's talking about how she wants better quarters. Maybe she can find herself a nice chunk of land on planet Live Forever with Mike Ehrman Trout.
Yeah, absolutely. Deluxe accommodations forever.
I think that there would have been a great spin-off series with these 4 diplomats just going on and getting into ridiculous shit with each other. Again, just really jolted by the openness that this episode or that this series says the word sex.
Like it does.
The ladies, like these Ferengi sex programs, like terminology you never hear.
Openly, too, like we've already had enough implication that the holosuite programs are for fucking, that hearing it explicitly stated isn't really like moving the needle too much. But now it's like straight up, no, like that's where the place you go to have the sex. It's like, and yes, it is spoken, it is real. It's still jarring. Still like made me sit up a little. Like, really? Okay. Seems it's not chaste.
I would
feel
also
uncomfortable.
Yeah. Also reminded, like, all right, the Federation has diplomats. A lot of them. You're sending one mission. You're sending 4 people out on the same mission. Like, again, DS9 at the forefront of all of this should have one of these guys permanently stationed there. And I think you could take basically any of these people and throw them on the station as a side character and have gotten some really great mileage, specifically as somebody who is haughty and confident and well-placed that can stand up to Sisko, but still isn't Starfleet where they can like challenge him on equal footing.
I mean, ambassador characters have a strong narrative history in Star Trek of being kind of semi-antagonistic figures that fuck shit up for the main characters. So you could have entered that into the circumstance. It certainly would have made sense. The Federation would have vested interest in having some sort of diplomatic envoy where a bunch of first contacts are going to happen, especially when the guy they appointed to run the place is a fucking psychopath whose wife got killed, who's they intended to kind of stick in the middle of nowhere, and now he's got like this super plum appointment, and also he's apparently their Jesus, so you can't even get rid of him. So
and also avoids first contact diplomatic situations whenever possible and shoves his subordinates at him, and then laughs as they are put into duress and pain. So yeah,
It,
I think you could go with we could clear up some officers' quarters and get a diplomat out there probably.
the balls on Cisco that he's like, 4 ambassadors are on my station. I will send the doctor. Like,
The first year officer.
just
The ball's on Troi because when she loses her latinum brooch and grabs Quark by the ear, and it's just like, I know exactly where it hurts to pinch your dick on your head dicks here.
yes.
What you call him, a little troll?
I do appreciate that, like, Odo comes in, I'm here to find out what happened. And then, Lwaxana's doing her best Karen impression to explain what's going on. And it's like, so your beta Z? Yes. So you can read everyone's minds? Yes. Well, did anyone fucking steal it? I just, why am I here? Like, it's like, well, no, I guess no, I don't sense anything. I was like, well, that actually does help because apparently these little big-headed boys, they're somehow related to Ferengi, and you can't read Ferengi's minds, so that means you can't read their minds.
Established here or her Ferengi episode prior?
That was was it Menage a Troi?
Ugh.
I think that was established. She describes the episode.
I know, that was really nice continuity.
It was, describing how she fucked the guy. Like,
does this get to be part of an arc? Is this Menage a Troi arc
part 2?
Part
no.
2?
I guess that you could call the 3 Lwaxana Troi episodes of DS9 a bit of an arc because they all share a similar pattern, which is Lwaxana shows up to hang out with Odo / try and bang Odo or whatever, and hijinks ensue. So that pattern is repeated. I will say the next 2 times it happens, it's much better. So got that going for us.
I also like the mention by the other lady diplomat that the beds on the station, the Cardassian beds, have gargoyles carved into wooden bed poles.
Some real gothic motherfuckers.
Yeah,
up in this
like,
bitch.
You sure that wasn't actually Odo shapeshifted into something that very clearly did not belong on the station, like wooden bed frames on Terek Nor? That doesn't seem right.
So, yeah, Julian's plot here is that he gets to babysit these people. They're insufferable. They're awful. They want to go to ops. They want to involve themselves in things. He's forced to see to their wishes. He complains to Cisco. And Cisco's like, hey, you know what? This is just a ritual that all junior officers have to go and doing the work that their superiors don't want to do, like babysit ambassadors. It's like, oh, you had to do it too, Commander? Yes, I did. Curzon used to make me do it. How'd you get out of it? I punched them because I'm crazy.
Lots of punching out of Cisco. Especially
not beating the stereotypes at this rate. I'm sorry. Like, just keep going back.
He's talks about wanting to hit Dax in the episode Dax. Talks about how he would have hit Curzon. We're a long way away from season 1 of Next Generation, where you had like Roddenberry's really idealized, distant alien version of humanity that had ascended to such lofty heights. But man, Cisco really is a ruffian.
He is.
Hey, real quick, Curzon, what was Curzon's rank when he died? Is there any sort of like rank transference from Trill to Trill, or does that all default to whatever the host is at the time of joining?
Curzon was an ambassador. He was not a member of Starfleet.
Interesting.
But the rank does not... They're separate people. So you don't get to inherit your old incarnations like rank if they were in Starfleet or something like that. So
is that fair though? Because if you have full recall of everything they did, I think you can make a case to HR.
Listen, this is something that the Star Trek community is well aware of, and I think they largely agree with you. What they do with Dax in the DS9 novel era suggests that your perspective prevails in the minds of many creatives. But that is, they treat it in that nothing carries over. It's new game. It's not new game plus. It's just you get your achievements. You know, you can look back in fondness,
Mm-hmm.
but you're starting fresh.
You got to keep these trills down.
Yeah, otherwise they're just like all going to be admirals forever, right?
Yeah.
Like, kind of makes sense that you don't want to guys. Okay, it's one of the
And you look at it too, you're like, all right, how you only a lieutenant
aristocracy of joined trills running everything.
along with the Vulcans who live forever and should outperform humans in everything. The fact that there's any humans in upper management at all really shows you that Starfleet itself is like a racist organization that heavily favors humans over much better, longer lived, smarter choices.
I think the Enterprise did a decent job of trying to explain that, though. When you think about the Vulcan trilogy, and like humans have a unique capacity to adapt and evolve and innovate that apparently just escapes other races. They have a dynamism to them that is actually their most interesting trait. And that's why they end up in a leadership position, because they are, unlike the Vulcans or the Noblians or some of the other races we saw, just not stagnant. They're moving forward and they bring everyone else along with them.
The problem is that the exposure you have to the other characters, like Jadzia Dax, are indistinguishable from humans. So it kind of throws that out of the window. Like, there is nothing alien about her at all other than her cheetah print tattoos from college.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the alien nature of the Trill race is specifically the whole joined thing. And there's a whole bunch of unjoined Trills that are, as you note, just basically the same as normal humans. They didn't really alienify that race. The same way they did with Bajor. Like, Bajorans feel different. Bajorans feel like there's something other than human. They're on Azeroth. They're used to magic. Like, they're very weird lives. And
yeah, they're not afraid to put people in the wall. Lon Suitor, the best.
That's a Betazoid.
I know.
I was talking about Bajor. I was talking about Jorans.
Oh, I thought you were saying Betazoids are
no,
nice.
Bajorans are weird. Betazeds also weird, but it's because they birth psychopaths or telepaths, one or the other. So I guess Julian's plot wraps up because he saves them during the fire, right? Like, you don't get to see him be heroic. He's just heroic off screen, where apparently he gets everyone into a Jeffries tube and waits out the flames.
First of all, he ends up on this docking pylon or wherever the fuck they are, and this fireball just shoots out of nowhere. And instantly I'm thrown back to If Wishes Were Whores. And Kira's fantasy, or so we assumed, was just a fireball flying and killing people, right? What if this thing that blew up on Julian wasn't actually like a plasma explosion, and that there's like the fireball version of Shaki from Voyager?
Is that the nature of the pet computer program that O'Brien winds up with?
I'm just saying now, it's possible that there's just a fire elemental on the loose ambushing people, and they haven't figured out, like, they keep chalking it up to like other things, and no, man, there's just a fire elemental running around on the station attacking.
All right, people. Go to the group finder, get a tank, healer, 3 DPS. We're clearing this fire elemental out once and for all. Finest warriors of Azeroth up from Bajor.
So yeah, the fireball hits, shit collapses, the doors aren't working, it seems like they're all going to die, and then we later find out that he gets essentially a Jeffries tube open, and everyone comes out incredibly grateful and ingratiated towards him.
First name basis, all of them. I
can only assume it was a big orgy in there, and they've all come out the best friends.
Sweaty, sticky. They're like, oh, the fire must have been terrible. Yes, it was very hot in there.
Julian, you have won me over. Dr. Fuckboy, I'm going to put you in for a commendation. And that's, how Julian found common ground with these people, was cramped, sweaty, computer access sex.
Here, you listen. You know what's genetically engineered about me? My dick. I can go all night.
These tantric powers. Uh, Speaking of programming,
Yeah, leaves us with the actual, I guess, the A plot of the episode.
the space butthole opens, a pill flies out. I do like the conversation. Well, first of all, they introduce Yeoman Ensign No Name, Amara. Anara, is that her name?
Yes.
Is she going to be around more, or is this a one and done for her?
It is not. I'm trying to. No, it's not the same person I thought it was. She's one and done.
Very interesting they gave her so many lines. This could have been
You know,
many other characters.
I'm interested now to see, because I thought for a second, the reason I looked it up is there is a similar character in another episode in this season, and I thought that that was the same character, and that would have been really interesting because they would have, set this person up and then used them again. But no, it's just like they give O'Brien two attractive young Bajoran assistants this season, which is such a miss. Like, just use the same person, just use the same character, build continuity. Don't pass on these opportunities.
I don't get it. They bring it. So this probe comes flying in. They scan it, and it just appears to be a computer core, and it is a very powerful computer core. I like that they say that this has enough power to run a Galaxy class starship, and that really stood out as crazy to me because you never hear these people say the class names of ships. It's all well established and documented stuff, but like when people are on screen, at least in next gen, they were never like, oh, this is an Oberth class. They'll say Excelsior for the Excelsior, but it's not an Excelsior class.
Mm-hmm.
And Picard only says Galaxy class one time realistically in Encounter at Farpoint, where it's like, let's see what this Galaxy class can do. So I think already this is Deep Space Nine, like kind of peeling the covers back and being like, nerds, we see you.
You guys who are really into details like this, we're gonna use them.
You like starships? We're gonna have some pretty badass fights coming up.
Oh yeah,
we're gonna do some cool shit here, guys.
Pornographic for the Star Trek fan, I would even venture to say.
So this probe has a big computer core, and Cisco is rightfully like, no, we're not going to put this thing in our mouth. Let's like create some sort of a buffer. I personally would have sent a runabout out to go fuck with this thing, so you've got like, your sandbox laptop to go surf the dark web or whatever.
Oh, yeah, what? Why the fuck don't they get a runabout to beam Odo and Troy out of the fucking elevator?
Why don't they? You know what? Ask Voyager.
Why don't they get a runabout to beam the people who are stuck in the fire out of the fire?
Wow,
Yo, that's okay. Now, that's a plot. Like, I'm usually pretty willing to put aside plot contrivance errors, but they even bring up using the runabout to get people who are hurt in the fire to Bajor if required during the episode. So it's not like they even fucking forgot in the episode they fucking had the damn things.
Again, it's stuff that we would deal with in Voyager all the time. Oh, our transporter is broken. Well, we have like at least 3 shuttlecraft. Each of those have transporters. Each of those have replicators. I don't know why we're not using this stuff.
Especially for just short-term emergency needs.
Yeah. So again, it's not difficult to outsmart a Star Trek plot. All it takes is a little bit of there's an ionized field.
You can't do it. Yeah.
Just the plasma. The station's virus is affecting all of the shuttlecraft as well because, they're on the same Wi-Fi network or whatever. So
yeah, 10 seconds of dialogue and you don't have to worry about having a plot hole. It's not hard.
walk me through exactly what this thing is, because I fell asleep and I was not willing to go back and rewatch this.
Like, I'll be honest with you, I didn't fall asleep, and this is the part where I'm like, I'm fucking checked out. Like, I watched it. I'm like, they don't explain it really. It comes down to O'Brien thinking, because he's had this like contentious relationship with the Cardassian computer,
But that has a Starfleet voice, which is a problem.
that it's speaking differently, it's acting differently.
I did
Cisco,
like that.
yeah, I like that detail, and Cisco like seems somewhat suspicious of it. But the jarring part is in the next scene. Dax is like, yes, this is what's happening. I'm now going to speculate wildly about how it might work. So will O'Brien. Everyone is just accepting this. And we're moving on. Like, this is the actual answer to the plot, which they didn't really like ever establish in a way that lends credibility to the audience. I'm watching it and I got actually confused. I'm like, wait, is there a scene missing where they actually came to the conclusion that this is actually what's happening? Because otherwise, it's some pretty thin, if somewhat interesting, speculation on O'Brien's part. But they just like, you want to talk about jump to conclusion, Mats? They're like, what if it's a dog and we need to put it in a dog house? Like, them getting to that is like 3 different
Yeah,
jumps.
here's a wildly alien entity that has come through, and I'm going to dumb it down with human metaphors until we're at a point where I'm calling this thing a puppy, and we need to put it in the puppy house. I'm going to make a program called Pup House. So I love O'Brien hating the computer, the Cardassian computer.
Yeah, makes sense.
I like that the Cardassians have a much lower expectation and tolerance for bullshit. So the power core can be 20% deficient and it's still within spec for Cardassian standards.
Yeah, like, yeah, close enough. It's very, I forget the phrase in Chinese that describes it, but it's like the difference between like American engineering, there's like strong safety protocols and tolerances, and then Chinese engineering, which is literally just close enough.
Good enough. I like him saying, every computer is different, which I really like the lore that these very fancy computer cars are in fact sentient and smart enough to hide that.
And then that like negotiating with their peculiarities requires effort, and that the enterprise computer in particular was very persnickety.
No,
You
he
know, it was,
said every one of them's different. Dealing with the Enterprise was like ballroom dancing. It was just easy. This thing, what do you say? It's like swimming in mud or something.
I forget, again, one of those things where I was
He
like,
shit on it.
yeah.
And that he wanted to basically rebuild the entire computer system, which again, pretty cool. So now he has established that he hates the computer and that the DS9 computer is in fact stupid and bad and stops him from doing things and makes his life hell. This probe shows up and there is a sentience living off of the energy that the probe is generating, or it is an AI system that is somehow rewarded by high power consumption.
I don't know. They don't explain, because I think it goes back to what you said, right? I don't think this was made by people who understand technology very well. They're like, it's a sentient mechanical life. How is it an AI? Is it a sentient software upload? Is it, what is it? There's stuff. It's alive.
It's
It's a
a
dog.
computer.
It's a
Yeah,
dog.
it's a computer and it wants to be happy. Okay, so if this thing is some sort of electricity vampire, that's one thing. If this is a AI that has just shown up caught in a basically someone else's Moriarty, right? You put it on a fucking holodeck cube and send it off into space and just threw it at the space
Oh,
butthole and
they
said,
could have put
okay,
it back on the probe at the end of the episode, but just didn't. Instead, they wanted to make one more dog joke.
yeah. So by the end of this, they have tried to shunt it off into a isolated area, and that failed, and there were explosions and like bad shit happened. this thing was also kind of jerking Miles around where he would just leave and it would cause problems to bring him back in, so he was interacting with it. Which,
It
why there's no assumption that there's a malicious element here is beyond me.
just okay. First, they jump to conclusion that it's sentient life. Then they jump to conclusion that it is simple in its construction, such that it's responding like a puppy would. And then third, that it would be fooled by simply essentially containing it in some kind of quote unquote doghouse. And all of these assumptions end up being exactly correct the way Miles Edward O'Brien, an enlisted man who's your break fix operator on your buster ass pilot station, has extrapolated from no evidence. It's so stupid, it's poorly written, and I hated every second of it. And like you, I was just unengaged. I just didn't want to watch it. I seriously started contemplating. It's like, do I just fast forward to the Lwaxana Odo stuff in the elevator and then try to figure out like what happened by reading the memory alpha so I don't have to submit myself to this? I did watch the whole thing, but that's it. That's my takeaway.
My takeaway is, what's the fucking point of this story? Because if the beginning of the episode is Miles saying this computer's trash, and then the middle of the episode is an AI or some creature that integrates with the system and ostensibly makes the system better because it stops fighting with him and it works better. And then at the end of the episode, they have essentially put it in a sandbox where it'll be safe but still can be happy. I hope at some point down the road, do they ever touch this thing again?
No, fuck no. Of course not.
So it's a pointless story. The story here should have been, this AI or this alien that lives in the computer, it's actually pretty great. And instead of it killing people, like the story is like, this thing's boosting the fuck out of station operations. And that's here, hold on.
There was nothing about this that.
Here's your story, right?
Oh, there we go. Ugh, my God.
This thing has flown in from the other side and it has infected itself into our system, and it is pure benevolence. And everybody is scared because things are different and the computer is operating different and everything seems like it's great. And by the end, you figure out it is great and maybe it's sentient or whatever. And the dilemma is, do we let this thing stay where it is saving us 3 years of rebuilding something on the station, or are we going to make the decision to turn this thing off and effectively kill it, shooting ourselves in the foot? And the answer to the end of that is, it's not a Federation decision, and that Kira, with their barely developed Bajoran social system, can make the call of, we're going to let this thing live, we're going to roll the dice on it, and it's going to be a benefit to everybody. And wow, for once, something nice came out of the wormhole, and look at it making ourselves better. Maybe it's not all asshole degenerate gambler hillbillies.
I mean, that's a great rewrite. I got no notes. It's way better than what we get. I don't think that they really conceived of what they were doing. I don't think they cared. I think that if you want to see what phoning it in looks like, it's how they wrote this. And your plan is fantastic, but I think that frankly any plan would have been better than what they did. Listen, man, I think it's time to tap out on this.
I got two more things I want to talk about.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
I'm going to jump back into the Odo Troi scene.
Okay.
When she corners him,
gladly go back to that.
And he gets in the turbo lift, and we get our first interior shot of the turbo lifts in motion. The fucking ocean nightmare of these things. Jesus Christ. It's like you're in a man-sized cheese grater, and God help you if you lean forward or if there is turbulence and you rock forward. This is a turbo lift system that would be well at home on Event Horizon.
It makes the safety issues on the Enterprise lifts in engineering look like nothing in comparison.
The lifts on the Enterprise are going to cut your fingers off. This thing is going to shave you down to your spinal cord. Give me the episode where there's a murder and it's just someone like this, like New York subway bullshit where someone just pushes another person forward and they melt against the wall as this turbo lift is just zipping around. I can only hope that there is a force field they're not mentioning. Otherwise, never let children on this station.
They will touch it and they will lose the entirety of their hand.
Their hand, they won't have an arm. They'll be lucky if they have a shoulder or a head by the time this thing is done. That is made to melt flesh. And I want to jump back to Ops. Why Ops has transporter pads in it? It's because the Cardassian high command isn't fucking stupid. They know what those turbo lifts are going to do to people. And they're like, listen, if I'm going to work on this station, you better put some transporters like next to my office because I am never using these turbo lifts. These Bajorans hate us. And I guarantee you there's going to be uprisings where workers are going to be pushing guards in and they're just going to smear into the wall and turn into fine red mist.
You know, something we forgot to talk about when we were doing Voyage Home for Patreon is that when the whale doctor jumps on Kirk and gets transported onto the
way to roll the dice, lady.
Yeah, gets transported onto the bird of prey. She's like yelling. And it's like, is that her recognizing her soul's being ripped out of her body?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Like, whoopsie daisy. Yeah, you're going to the future as a soulless husk.
They were
You could have stayed in the 20th century and died with your spirit intact.
Well, you know what they say, my mind was in the future, but my heart and soul will always be in the 1986, where I died.
Right before I left.
Where I was evaporated into thin air and the Holy Ghost was able to leave me and go fly up into the ozone or whatever fucking environmental message they wanted to send on that one.
I'm through here, though. Are you done?
I also want to say it was very rude of Odo to not actually turn into a chair for Lwaxana. Like, what does he care what his form is? And, like, is there anything that could be less sexually attractive than a chair? Like,
starts humping it immediately.
He's
made himself defenseless. Like,
but I'm just saying, like, listen, if you're ever with Odo and it's like, man, I'm sick of fucking standing up. We've been here 4 hours. Like, dude, can you just turn into a fucking chair? His not looking down, but his constant, you know, disparaging remarks about humanoids and this and that. And it's like, think about Orville and Norman, what's his face's slime character.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is the same character, more or less. It would be cool to just have Odo be a cube rolling down the hallway with tentacles coming off of it that only sometimes takes on a humanoid form if he's got to do people stuff. But I'm surprised we were able to hit an hour on this, frankly.
It was a struggle, but we got there. Hopefully next week won't be as much of a struggle. So what are we going to watch, sir?
We're going to be into season 1, episode 18, Dramatis Persona. I got Kira pulling a gun.
Already off to a strong start. Another thing this episode did not have much Kira.
It did have them shooting phasers at the doors. The Cardassians were not fucking around with build quality on Deep Space Nine. On
Cardassian hallways are made of stern stuff, that is for sure.
I mean, they were using like full setting disintegrate and like they just basically peeled through the wallpaper. The crew becomes infected by a telepathic imprint of a culture that destroyed itself.
I feel like we've seen that Star Trek episode like 4 times.
This season, as a matter of fact.
Like, all right, run it back one more time, I suppose.
I think it's time for them to get some telepaths stationed here to help them with these frequent brain infections that they're having.
You know, like maybe an ambassador that can read minds.
There's the pairing that. Get Lwaxana permanently stationed on Deep Space Nine. I want strong antagonism between her and Quark because she drinks a lot but never pays her tab.
And you want to talk about a character that would have great foil for Cisco in a way that no one else would, it would be Lwaxana Troi, right? Like, she's never near shit in the same, like, she's not aggressive, but she's just impossible to deal with. And then, like, shows these incredible flashes of brilliance in dealing with problems. And you're like, have to tolerate this. And then you understand why she's an ambassador suddenly.
And just hangs out in Quarks and pulls mad amounts of info out of there. Like,
oh, yeah.
She's clearly a barfly. Like,
her and Morn could, like, team up. You know, like, not to be together, but, like, be bar friends, you know? Oh, yeah. You could hear all about their adventures off screen. Lost opportunity. But it won't be, but it'd be a gained opportunity for all of us to talk to you next week. See you then.